The sauna tradition gives families a time to sit back and share their lore. I learned more about my grandfather, my father, and his brothers in the sauna than I did anywhere else. I feel the women in the sauna did the same thing. There you are, naked, bared to all. The stories come forth. Terrence Lyons, in Jeff Smith's article, It's a Sauna Thing You Wouldn't Understand.
Hi, this is Hudson, and welcome back to the Sauna Trail podcast. Join us in our adventures as we share the story of how our family discovered the world of Finnish sauna. You might be wondering why anyone would do a podcast dedicated to something as commonplace as sauna. It's like doing a podcast about rocks, kale, or lawnmowers. Well, if you stick around, you might find out there's more to sauna than you realized. Last week, we returned to the sauna trail and shared about our first barrel sauna experience and a trip to the north shore of Lake Superior. In today's episode, we don't travel to use any saunas, but we talk about some of the community connections we made during the first year of our Finnish sauna discovery. To start out, what's been happening on the sauna trail recently?
Well, I had a bunch of dudes come over to sauna this past weekend, so that was pretty fun. It was Dan and Ryan and Eric and John and myself. Pretty good sized group of dudes. We had 4 cold plunges and some sausage and potatoes afterwards, so it was a good time hanging out. And then I think we also have planned for this weekend to do some more sauna hosting with some friends of ours, Daniel and Kelsey.
Yep, they'll be coming down.
So I look forward to that.
Yeah, we also tried to plan a girls' sauna with some of Nala and I's friends on that same day, but a lot of them couldn't make it. But I think I'm still going to sauna with one of them. So, yeah.
So, as you can tell, like sauna is very much a social practice for us. But it wasn't always this way when we got into sauna. We were pretty much alone. We didn't really have anybody who saunaed or knew what it was living around us.
Yeah, and it was because of that we started to reach out to people on the internet, since that was really our only way to connect. And we created a Facebook group.
And really, when he says we, he really means Christopher. Christopher started the Facebook group.
That's right. So I created a Facebook group and a website that we'll talk about, and then some other just kind of random connections along the way. The Facebook group, I mainly created it for 2 reasons. The first, to give our friends and family a break from hearing about our new weird get naked and take a hot bath obsession.
Yeah.
And the second was to attract people who knew about sauna, who grew up with it, so that I could learn from them and hear their stories. So I decided to call the Facebook group Wood Burning Sauna, because the percentage of people who know about wood burning sauna and really understand sauna would be quite high. I'm not getting a lot of people that are just really enthusiastic about their gym sauna, or that they bought an infrared one that they use in their basement.
But even then, like this again was in 2015. So I feel now that there's more sauna groups and things like that. But back then, there wasn't even any of that health and infrared stuff. I don't remember.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't as popular back then.
Mm-hmm.
There were definitely some people into it and even into real sauna and getting into it, but kind of several people were coming to it independently at the same time. And over the years, there's been people that get really excited about it and create something. But the wood burning sauna group, it started off very slow. It was just friends and family at first, and they could just choose to ignore it. But eventually people started finding the group, and it really created as far as I know, one of the very first robust online sauna communities. Now, maybe there were a couple other small ones, especially in foreign languages, but here in North America, I think it was. But since that time, there's been several others that you've mentioned, and they've grown quite large, and they're good, very good groups, and they've eclipsed our small wood burning sauna community. I could share a whole gigantic list of names of people that I learned about sauna from this group, heard their stories, and even sauned with them at their saunas. So I'm just going to go through and list a bunch of names, and I'm sure I've forgotten a few people. I apologize. I'll remember after this episode's published, but Jeff, Chemo, Kev, Shane, Steve, Arnie, Dennis, Candy, Dan, Lee, Nathan, Pablo, Rudd, Joe, John, Dave, Jim, Brian, Adam, and a special mention for Scott Reisenen, who I've gone on many sauna adventures with. He's like my sauna adventure buddy. And that group has resulted in so much interesting connection and content. The members will share photos of their own saunas. We've even created 2 calendars with really cool looking saunas as part of those calendars.
And I remember one guy you didn't mention, he actually said that he left Facebook, but then he missed the wood burning sauna group. So he actually came back to Facebook so that he could still be in the group and see all of the pictures and interact. So that's fun.
And also about the same time, I had been using a website called medium.com and just really enjoying their really thoughtful and simple interface. And so I decided to create a website that was more public facing because the Facebook group was private. And I just called that website Sauna Digest. And I put on there book reviews as well as just like random thoughts and things that I was learning. And actually, next we'll be diving into the surprisingly deep world of Finnish sauna books. So that will be a fun episode. Some of the more notable articles that stand out to me would be one titled Don't Call It Sauna, in which I kind of explore the question of what is a sauna, what isn't a sauna. Is a hot tub a sauna? Is a hot day a sauna? Is infrared sauna? I specifically connected with a few people who would be experts in the field and would be able to tell me. Eero Kilpi, Risto Eloma, and someone that helped start the Finnish Sauna Society, H.J. Viherjuri. And I took what they taught me and then put it into this article. And then another one was called The Saunas of Brantwood, which kind of shares a little bit of our story of visiting Brantwood, Wisconsin, which has a little Finnish community there and several unique saunas, and we photographed them and shared those in that article.
That was a really fun trip. I'm excited to share about that trip too.
And eventually I invited other people to share their stories on Sauna Digest, so there's some really interesting ones of those there.
One of them being Jeff Pisack's story of stumbling into an odd sauna subculture at his lake house, and how he ended up with a no sniveling sign in his sauna.
Or Teresa Lansbury's story of entering the sauna world through the health and detox lens and discovering the rich cultural practice. Her article is titled Not Dead Yet.
And Matthew Blom documented his sauna build that used reclaimed materials for a total cost less than $500.
And then another story is the story of Jim Torla's amazing log sauna that was built by the Amish. And then, of course, our story.
And also I started to reach out to just random sauna enthusiasts online, like Glenn Auerbach at Sauna Times, and David Salmla, both the author and the architect. They share the same name. And Kimmo Ratio and Risto Eloma, who are in Finland, who took so much time to teach me and answer just my many questions about sauna. And then I also ran across something called the North American Sauna Society. And they had a website, which I was super excited to see that something like that even existed. And the website was a little bit dated, but I was able to get in touch with the president of this North American Sauna Society. And I just offered, hey, you want me to redesign your website? So that was a good experience of working together with them and trying to share what sauna was and give them a website that allowed them to edit and update things a little bit easier. And actually, I've continued working with the president of the North American Sauna Society, who is Eero Kilpi. And for those of you who know, he's a co-host of mine on the Upper Bench podcast, which is another sauna podcast that I do. It's kind of a weird story of how that got started. I would just talk to Eero somewhat regularly, maybe once a month or once every 2 months. And we just enjoyed chatting about our ideas of sauna and what was going on and complaining about stuff. And eventually he brought in, I think Arrow brought in Sam Wacha, and he would join our conversations. And we all three enjoyed those conversations enough that we're like, we should just start doing this more formally and record them. And that is how the Upper Bench got started.
Going back to the North American Sauna Society website, Christopher is a good writer. He will say that he's not really a good writer, but I think he's a good writer. So on the website is a quote of his, and I'll read it right now. It's, "In a sterile plastic world, sauna is the sound of the steam on the rocks with its enveloping warmth, the smell of wood, and the warm sauna benches." So I just wanted to put that out there because I like your writing.
Yeah, no one else was gonna put together text for the website, so I got to put together the text. So if you're listening to this in 2024 and they haven't redesigned it, which it's probably due for another redesign, all the quotes on the front page are still probably what I came up with as I was redesigning the website.
So those are the connections that we started making online because, like I said, there wasn't really anybody here where we were living to connect with, to talk about sauna, to learn about it, to ask questions. So looking back on all of those connections that we've made in this greater sauna community, what are some of the most memorable for each of you guys?
Well, and you said that we didn't have much community then, but we have more now.
Yes, we do.
Several of our friends and family have saunas in town, and the ones that don't have been introduced to it and like it.
Yep.
So there's plenty of people to sauna with and share the excitement with. But a couple of memories for me, and there's so many that we'll be sharing in future episodes, but two that come to mind are sauning with Shane Lintonen up in Thunder Bay. And I won't get into that story, but I'll tell more about that when we share that. The second one was using Adam Kangus's family sauna, which was very old. I think it was maybe 100 years old, and that whole experience was a load of fun.
I would say for me, I really enjoyed going to the Scandinavian Bazaar. We went a few times.
Where was that?
That was in Cokato,
Yep.
Minnesota. Yeah, just seeing all the stuff going on up there, and getting to use a sauna. Yeah, I love the Scandinavian Bazaar.
And we'll actually be having an episode about the Scandinavian Bazaar in Cokato coming up probably within the next month or so.
Yep.
One of the most memorable experiences I had was visiting David Salmela, the architect. His whole, taking a tour through his house, seeing the unique, interesting architecture was really interesting for me. And then he had a bunch of these cardboard models of houses downstairs. So he showed us all those, and he showed us a little bit of how he made them. So that was I was younger, and I was like, this is amazing, so cool.
I was really young, so I don't remember very many community connections, but I do remember when you started the wood burning sauna group, Daddy. I would check every day and be like, how many members do we have? Are the members going up?
I remember going to Arnie Kangus's sauna and looking at all his chainsaws that he was repairing and the stoves that he was making.
Yeah, that was really cool.
I think one of my favorite connections that we made was with Rudd in the Catskills. It was very nice to meet him in person because he was very active in the woodburning sauna group. So it was fun to meet him in person. I'm not much of an animal person, but they had a dog named Coda. And I just love that dog. Like, he is definitely my speed, doesn't really like to do a lot, sits a lot, just watches people, didn't bark. It's my kind of dog.
My favorite dog of all time.
Is Coda?
Yep.
Was it a she or a he?
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember. Coda. That's all I remember is the name.
Oh, yeah, and there's one more I have to throw in here. When I was invited to sauna with Dave Dompierre and in the UP, and his sauna was great, and meeting him was great. And then he also took me around to a few other people on the lake. I think it was Shag Lake. And it was just cool to see like how many saunas there were around there and how rich the sauna culture was there.
So as you can see, community is such a big part of sauna. And I think that aspect has gotten lost as us Americans have turned the village Finnish steam bath into these individualized, hot, dry cedar rooms in their basements. So I think all this connecting has been really fun for me. I think we appreciate the kids as being willing to come along and meet strangers and go to their houses and take baths with them. So thanks for hearing us, kids. And meeting all of those people have really enriched our sauna practice and what we do. It's been quite the adventure.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, our whole family, we're a family of introverts. And so
Yes, we are.
so this is very stretching for us. Sometimes people will hear our stories and it's like, you did what? You went and sounded naked with some stranger? I thought you were an introvert. It's like, yes, but introverts can still do things. It's good to be stretched.
And for the record, I think only Christopher has sounded naked with strangers. I mean, I suppose I have in a public one, but not like,
Yeah, just Julie and I.
yeah.
Thanks for being with us today as we shared how we connected to the larger sauna community. At the time, even though we made some new online friends, we weren't really taking sauna with anyone who understood it. We continued learning about it through reading books or watching documentaries or home videos on YouTube. So, in the next episode, we'll talk about some of our favorite sauna books and even read some excerpts that we found unique or helpful on our sauna trail. If you haven't yet, join our locals community and say hi. It's free to sign up. You'll get regular updates from us. If you enjoy our content and would like to support this podcast, Locals has that option as well. The address is thesaunatrail.locals.com. We appreciate all of our supporters and fellow sauna hounds. Our podcast can be found on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, and other streaming platforms, as well as our website, thesaunatrail.com. New episodes release on Saturdays, which is the traditional Finnish day for sauna, also called Sauna Päivä. We hope to see you on the Sauna Trail.